Namaste. Today we begin a new module which is physical geography in the Indian context. So, in this module, we will have a look at the concepts of physical geography that we have studied so far as they apply to our country. So, this module will have three lectures: the structure and physiography of India, the climate and habitats of India, and the drainage systems. So, let us begin with the structure and physiography of India. Where is India located? So, this is our country India. It is located in this continent called Asia, and Asia and Europe are joined together. So, this whole landmass is also referred to as Eurasia. Then we have Africa here, and Africa and Asia have the Arabian Peninsula in between. Here we have North America, this is South America, this is Australia. So, India is having a central location in this portion. So, essentially, if the ships have to move from this place to Africa, then they typically take a route like this. Now, this portion is the Indian Ocean. So, the country India is located on top of or in the north of the Indian Ocean. Here we have the Arabian Sea, and this is the Bay of Bengal. Some salient points: the latitudinal extent of India is from 6 degrees 45 minutes north to 37 degrees 6 minutes north latitudes, which in total is 3214 kilometers from north to south. And the longitudinal extent is 68 degrees 7 minutes east to 97 degrees 25 minutes east longitudes, which is 2933 kilometers if we look in the east-west direction. The southern parts of the country are in the tropical zone. So, this portion is in the tropical zone. We have equator that moves roughly around here. So, this is the tropical zone, and this portion in the north is the subtropical zone. The location has a geopolitical significance, especially because of our vantage location in the Indian Ocean. If we talk about connectivity, in the case of air connectivity, India is fairly well connected, not as good as Europe or North America or say Japan and China, but it is fairly well connected. If you look at water connectivity, then most of the ships will use this route, and so they have to traverse through the Indian Ocean, which makes our position very strong. We have 28 states and 8 union territories. So, this is the political division of India. The country is very well connected. If we talk about say railway connectivity, we have some of the highest densities of railways in the world. The road connectivity also is very good. And we have also looked at the geographical history of India. So, 70 million years ago, the Indian landmass was here. It moved towards the north and it collided with the Eurasian plate. So, this portion continued to move. It turned in the anti-clockwise direction and ultimately it collided with the Eurasian plate. Now, when it collided with the Eurasian plate, we had the development of the fold mountains called Himalayas in this region because of this convergence. So, this has given rise to fold mountains. So, let us now look at what these fold mountains look like. So, this is our country in 3 dimensions. Now, in this case, this is the satellite imagery that is overlaid on the DEM profile of the world. Now, DEM refers to digital elevation model. So, this is essentially a 3-dimensional representation of the earth. Now, on this 3-dimensional representation, what I have done is I have superimposed the satellite imagery. Now, to make things visible, there have been certain exaggerations in the z direction. So, essentially when you look at the heights, in actuality the heights are not this big, but in to make this representation, the heights have been exaggerated. So, for instance, if we look at our country from the south, we can see that yes, we have a wall of Himalayas, but essentially if you stand here, you will not see the wall of Himalayas. So this is an exaggeration that has been done to understand things. Now in this case, this landmass, when it collided with the Eurasian plate, it led to the development of these fold mountains. So here we have the Himalayas. So these are the Himalayas, and we'll find that they are in several layers one after the other. So this, then this, then this, and so on. So essentially what is happening is that when the plates are colliding, it is leading to a crumpling of the sheet, which means that when the plates collided, so we have one plate like this, and it is colliding with another plate. So because of this relative movement, what happens is that this portion gets crumpled, so it becomes up and down, something like this, which is what we are observing here. So you have ups, downs, ups, downs, ups, downs, and so on. So these are the fold mountains. Essentially the crust has become folded in this region, because of which we call it a fold mountain. So this resulted in the fold mountains. We also have fold mountains here, where the landmass is nearing its edge, and also here. So this collision resulted in the development of fold mountains. So essentially the rest of the India, this portion is older and this portion is more recently formed. So when these portions collided, earlier this portion was the Tethys Sea, and we have observed before that in the case of seas and water bodies, we have the deposition of sediments that lead to the formation of sedimentary rocks. Now in these regions, when both the plates were colliding, the sea was gradually shrinking. It came in between both of these plates, and so it was gradually sinking. And when there was the folding that happened, a lot of the sedimentary rocks, the sedimentary layers, they were uplifted. So if you go to the Himalayas, you'll find that it has a large number of sedimentary rocks. You even find a large number of fossils in the Himalayas. Now these are those fossils that at one point of time were found in the Tethys Sea. So we can easily observe these sedimentary layers in a number of places. So here we can observe that these are in a large number of layers. Now this portion is still tectonically active because the plates are still moving, the Himalayas are still rising, and because of that we still get a large number of earthquakes in these areas. At the same time, because the rocks are predominantly sedimentary rocks, so they are not that strong, and so very often we find things like landslides in the Himalayas. So this is an example of a landslide. So this portion would earlier have been covered with trees like this, but this whole portion collapsed because the rocks are not that strong. Geologically, we can divide India into three regions: the mountains, the peninsular block, and the plains formed by Indus, Ganga, and Brahmaputra. And physiographically, we can divide India into 6 different physiographic divisions. Now physiography refers to physical geography and geomorphology taken together. So here we are talking about the processes that are happening and the landforms that have developed because of these processes. So physiography is the outcome of the structure, process, and stage of development. When we talk about structure, we are talking about what kinds of rocks are there, what kinds of sediments are there. When we talk about processes, what are the main geomorphological agents? Are winds playing the major role? Is water playing the major role? Are sea waves playing the major role? And so on. And the stage of development, which means how much time have these agents had so far to develop the landforms. So for instance, we have observed that in the case of say winds, in the beginning the winds go on eroding the landscape and they lead to the development of a large number of landforms. But over time, when most of the landform has been eroded, we get a flat plain, a penny plain in that area. Now, this is what we are talking about, the stage of development. How much time did the geomorphological agents have to chisel or to modulate the landform of the region? So, in this context, India is divided into 6 physiographic divisions: the northern and northeastern mountains, the northern plain, the Indian desert, the peninsular plateau, the coastal plains, and the islands. Now, these are 6 physiographical divisions, but we have only 3 geological divisions. Now, when we talk about geology, we are more interested in what kinds of rocks and what kinds of materials are these areas made of. So, as we have observed, the mountains are made out of sedimentary rocks that have been folded. The peninsular block is comprised primarily of very old rocks, typically those that have also arisen because of the basalt floodplains. And the Indo-Ganga-Brahmaputra plain has been formed because of large amount of alluvial deposits. So these are 3 different geological regions and these are 6 different physiographical regions. Now let us look at all of these. When we talk about the northern and northeastern mountains, we are talking about the mountains here and the mountains in the form of this arc and the mountains to the northeast of the country. So let us now look at these mountains in more detail. So I'll just zoom up this image. So here are our union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, and I have marked some prominent peaks and the mountain ranges that they belong to. So here we can observe that here we have the Pamir mountains. So this is the Lenin Peak, the Ismail Somoni, the Kongurtag, the Mustagata, all of these belong to the Pamir mountains. Here on the top we have the Tian Shan mountains. So this is Buzbu 2, Tian Shan, Gora Babashata, Genghis Chokshu, Gora Alagordi. Now these ranges are the Tian Shan mountains. Below that we have, or to the south of that, we have the Pamir Ale mountains that move like this, followed by the Pamir mountains that move like this. So in Pamir Ale we have Pik Skalisti, we have Khazret Sultan, and in Pamir we have the Independence Peak, the Ismail Somoni, the Lenin Peak. Now these are the names that were there in the Soviet Union, and a large number of these names are still continuing. Some of them have been changed. Then this is followed by the Hindu Kush mountains. Now these ranges are the Hindu Kush mountains. So here we have the peaks such as Sakarsar, Noshak, Kuh-e-Bandaka and Kohemundi. So these are the Hindu Kush mountains. We also have this Tirishmir that belongs to the Hindu Kush mountains. Now on this side we have the Karakorams. So this is one peak, Kunjrep Sar 1, Batura Sar is Karakoram, Mustaq Tower is Karakoram, Broad Peak, K12, Sasir Kangri 2 and so on. So these are the Karakoram mountains. On this portion we have the Kunlun mountains with peaks such as Quirlizuko Feng and Luishishan. Then we have the Himalayas that move like this. So the Himalayas begin at the Nanga Parbat. So this is the western edge of the Himalayas. Here we have the Pir Panjal range with the Sunset Peak. So this is to the south of Srinagar. Here we have other prominent locations like Kargil, Leh, Zanskar. This is the Somoriri Lake. This is the Pangong So Lake. Here we have Mount Kailash. Now these regions we had observed before. So this is Gangotri, Dham and Gomukh. So when we talked about the Gangotri glacier, this is the area we were talking about. Now the Himalayas move in the form of this chain, and so here we have the Dhaulagiri peak. So this is Dhaulagiri, this is Annapurna, this is Chooyu, this is Lhotse, this is Chirkhan, this is Makalu. Then we have the Kanchenjunga. Here we have the Namcha Barwa. So Namcha Barwa are the easternmost edge of the Himalayas. So at this point the Himalayas take a turn towards the south. And then in the northeast we have the Patkai Hills, we have Naga Hills, Jaintia Hills, Garo Hills and so on. Now if we look at this region in more detail, so this is again our union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. So here between the Hindu Kush range and the Karakoram and the Himalayas, we have another range which is known as the Hindu Raj range. Bunizome and Koyozome are important peaks in this range, and this is followed by the Hindu Kush range here. Now in the case of Karakoram, we have these peaks. This is K12. So K12 has this location. This is Gasherbrum, this is K2, and then this is the Aksai Chin Lake. And if we look at this portion in more detail, we will find that this is Srinagar. So this is the Kashmir Valley, and this Kashmir Valley has Himalayas on one side and Pir Panjal range on another side, and this is a peak of the Pir Panjal range. So this is Srinagar, and here we have the Leh range, and here we have the Zaskar range. So these are two other important ranges in this region. In this region we also find a large number of glacial lakes such as the Pangong Tso and the Tso Moriri, and this is an enlarged image of the Kashmir Valley. So here you can observe that we have the Kashmir Valley between these two hills, and this is more or less a flat area, and in this area we have lots of drainage, and we also have the lake. Now if we look at the Himalayan arc traverses the north of the country. So if we look at it in the 3D, so this is the Himalayan arc. Now the Himalayan arc forms our northern boundaries, and in this area we have the Mount Kailash, Dhaulagiri, Annapurna and so many other peaks up to Namcha Barwa. Then after the Himalayan arc, so this Himalayan arc is made obvious at a number of locations, and the arc is comprised of several ranges. So we have the Greater Himalayas, also known as the Himadri, we have the Himachal ranges, we have the Shivalik hills and so on. And so if we have a look at the Himalayan ranges, we'll find that we have rows after rows of hills and mountains. So this is an image from Oli. This is an image from Palampur in Himachal Pradesh. Here again you can observe that you have rows after rows of hills and mountains. This is how the Himalayas look from Manali. Here you can observe that there are a large number of horns in this area, which means that the glaciers are playing a big role in setting the geomorphology of this area. These are the Greater Himalayas and these are the Shivalik hills as seen from Tehri. So the Greater Himalayas have a higher height, they are towards the north, and the Shivaliks are towards the south. This is the Garhwal range of Shivalik Himalayas. So here you will not find snow-clad mountains, you will only find rows after rows of hills. So this is the Garhwal range. This is the Doon Valley. So Doon refers to valley in Garhwali language, and here you can find that you have hills here to the south, you have hills here to the north, and here you have Dehradun. So the Himalayas also have a large number of valleys between the ranges. If you look at the northeastern mountains, so this is the end of the Himalayas, Namcha Barwa. Here we have the Pangsau Pass in the Patkai Hills. So this portion is Patkai Hills, and here we have a connectivity between our country and Myanmar. This is the peak of the Naga Hills. So, and here we have Garo Khasi and Jaintia Hills. So Tura is in Garo Hills, Nokrek National Park is in Garo Hills. So this portion is Garo Hills. This portion is Khasi Hills, and here we have Jaintia Hills. To the south we have the Mizo or the Lushai Hills, followed by Arakan Yoma and Pegu Yoma. So if we look at this region in 3D, then what we are observing is that you have these Himalayas followed by these northeastern hills. So this is the portion that we are talking about now. So here you have the Naga Hills, the Mizo Hills, the Arakan Yoma, this is your Pegu Yoma. And the important characteristic of this region is that it essentially separates the Indian portion from these other locations. So basically we are having our country that is somewhat isolated from the rest of Asia, because you have mountains here, you have mountains to the north, you have mountains to the east. Now because of this, the geography and the culture of India has become very different from those of its neighbors. So much so that we refer to India as the Indian subcontinent. So India, some parts of Pakistan, some parts of the neighboring countries, they act as a subcontinent that is separated from the other parts of the continent. Now, another importance of these hills to the northeast is that when you have the monsoons are stopped by the Himalayas, and they are also stopped by these hills. So essentially the water that is moving in the form of moisture with the winds, it gets trapped in this area, and so we have a very heavy rainfall in this region. Next, if we look at the Meghalaya portion, we find Garo Hills. So this is Tura, this is Nokrek National Park in Garo Hills. This is Mawsynram, which is the location that gets the highest amount of rainfall in the whole world, and this is a part of Khasi Hills. Cherrapunji, which earlier held the record, is also close by. To the east of the Khasi Hills, we have the Jaintia Hills with places like Jovai. Next, we have the next physiographical division, which is the Northern Plains. Now, as against the Himalayas and the northern mountains and the northeastern hills, this region is a very flat land. So if we zoom into this area, let us zoom in here. Here you can observe that there is not much variation in the heights. This is more or less a flat region, and this region is drained by a large number of rivers. Now these rivers are coming from the Himalayas, they move to the south, and when they are moving in these steep mountains, they carry a large number of or a large amount of sediments. The erosional activities dominate here, but as soon as they reach into the plains, the speed goes down and they start to deposit the sediments. And this northern plain is comprised of all these sediments that have been deposited over thousands of years. So in this region we have the Indus River. So here you have the Indus River and its tributaries. So here you have Punjab and Haryana. Then you have Uttar Pradesh, that is being drained mostly by Ganga and Yamuna, followed by Bihar, West Bengal, and portions of the northeast such as Assam. Now this is the mighty Brahmaputra river, and all of this area is the flat plain. It continues even into Bangladesh. And in this region, it forms a very beautiful large sized delta that is known as the Sundarbans. So the Ganga, the Yamuna, and the Brahmaputra, they all combine together, and here they form a mighty delta. So this is the northern plains. Now the northern plains are primarily comprised of alluvial deposits. So it is made out of alluvial soil, which is the soil that gets deposited when the rivers move in a slower speed area. Now these alluvial deposits are extremely fertile, and so this region is very well known for its agriculture. Now in this area we have towns such as Kanpur, we have towns such as Kolkata. So all of these areas are the flat areas. So these are the northern plains. Now when the rivers move into the northern plains, we have a Bhabar belt. Now Bhabar belt is the region right next to the Himalayas, in the foothills of the Himalayas. Now in this region, the rocks that have been, or the pebbles that have been brought by the river, they get deposited, and in this region you'll find that the river is flowing and then suddenly it disappears between the rocks. So this region is the Bhabar belt. Next we have this is an image from Haryana. So Haryana is here. So here this is a part of the northern plains. This is the plains of Brahmaputra in Assam. We also have certain ravinous areas such as the ravines of Chambal. Now in this case, the erosional activity is predominating. Next we have the Indian desert. So this is the Indian desert or the Thar desert. And in this area, we find the Aravalli hills. So these are different peaks of the Aravallis. We have Guru Shikhar, which is Mount Abu. We have Kumbhalgarh, which has the Kumbhalgarh fort. We have Taragarh, Ajmer, and we have Khojaipur. And these Aravallis continue to Delhi. So if we look at the Aravallis, now in this particular model, the Z magnification is 100 times so that we can see the Aravallis. So these are the Aravallis. This is the highest peak, which is Guru Shikhar. Now if we look at this model, so here we have Gujarat, this is Rajasthan. Now you will observe that the Aravallis are roughly in the southwest to northeast direction. So they move like this, which has important ramifications for the climate of this area. So these are the Aravallis. Now it turns out that when we have the southwestern monsoons, then they move in this direction, and when they move like this, the Aravallis do not stop them. So there is hardly any orogenic rainfall that occurs in this area, whereas we get a large amount of orogenic rainfall here and in the northeast. So the Rajasthan is primarily a desert area because the Aravallis are oriented in this direction such that they are not able to stop the monsoons. So this is what the Indian desert looks like. So we have large areas that are completely covered with sands and sand dunes. This is the run of Kutch, which is primarily a flat area. This is the landscape. So you'll find that for very long distances, it's more or less a flat region that at times gets inundated, but otherwise is very dry and saline. Now this is followed by the Peninsular Plateau. The peninsular plateau is towards the south of the country. So this portion is the peninsular plateau. So let us now look at this portion in more detail. Now in this case the Z magnification is 150 times so that we can easily spot the peaks. Now when we look at the peninsular plateau, the first thing that comes to mind is that we have certain high peaks and that the area is somewhat undulating. It is not a flat area. Now we have different mountain ranges and these highlands are surrounded by these flat portions which are the coastal plains. So here we have the Bay of Bengal, and in this portion we have the Eastern Ghats followed by the Eastern Coastal Plains, and in this portion we have the Western Ghats followed by the Western Coastal Plains. Now you'll observe here that the Eastern Coastal Plains are much wider than the Western Coastal Plains. So in this case, here we can observe that the Eastern Coastal Plains are much wider in this green color, whereas the Western Coastal Plains are not that wide. And at the same time, this is a plateau region. Why is it a plateau region? Because if you look at it from the side, it looks more or less like a flat tableland. So we call it the peninsular plateau. Now this peninsular plateau is comprised of the Western Ghats which run to the west of the country. So here we have the Anjaneri peak in Western Ghats, the Kalsubai peak, the Purandar peak, the Sonsogor peak, Madikeri peak. So these are the Western Ghats. We have the Eastern Ghats to the east. So these are the Eastern Ghats with peaks such as Armakonda. Now this portion, it continues as the Nallamala Hills, which has areas such as Srisalam. Then towards the south we have the Nilgiri Hills with this peak called Dodabetta. We have the Biligiri Ranga Hills here and the Javadi Hills here. So we have Javadi and Shiravoy Hills. Then we have this Kolimalai, which is a part of the Eastern Ghats. And then down south in Kerala we have the Anaimalai Hills with places like Anamudi and the Palani and the Cardamom Hills. So this is essentially a highland area that we have in the form of the peninsular plateau. Now the peninsular plateau is divided into three parts. We have the Deccan Plateau, the Central Highlands and the Northeastern Plateau. The Deccan Plateau is characterized by the Deccan Traps. Now the Deccan Traps, so if you look at this image, here we are observing that we have a staircase like pattern in the Deccan Traps. Now the word traps refers to stairs, and Deccan Traps, the word comes from the fact that we have large basalt provinces in this area. And so when volcanic activity was happening in this area, when basalt was being spewed out, it came out in the form of different layers. So layer upon layer of basalt was deposited, and over time these layers have become very prominent after lots of erosion. So we can very easily see these layered structures, these staircase like structures, and these are the Deccan Traps. Then in the Western Ghats we can observe that the hills are not pointed. So unlike in the Himalayas where we find a large number of horns because there is the activity of glaciers, in South India we do not find these sharp peaks. Now this is primarily because of two reasons. One, that being in the tropical area we do not have any glacier activity that is going on here, and two is that unlike the Himalayas, which are young fold mountains, these hills are very old. So if we look at the history of India, so coming back to that slide, this portion was here even something like 70 million years ago. And so the erosional activities of these areas have been continuing, whereas the Himalayas are recently formed. So the Himalayas have not been eroded that much as compared to these hills in the Western Ghats, or say in Cardamom Hills or Palani Hills. So because these hills have been eroded over time, so you will find that these do not have any high peaks, but they are more or less having rounded peaks. So this is how the peaks look like. So this is an image from Coorg. This is the Nilgiri landscape. Now here again you will find that the hills, they do not have very sharp pointy peaks. They are more or less rolling mountains and separate, and they are few and far in between. Otherwise you also have certain areas that are more or less plain areas. Now we have the central highlands, and that is an extension of the Peninsular Plateau towards Gujarat. So these are the central highlands in Gir. So Gir is this portion. So here we are talking about this region. So in this region we find the extension of the peninsula, and here also we will find that the hills are old hills and they are rolling hills. They do not have sharp peaks. Now in central India, in this portion we have the plateaus of Rewa and Satna. So this is what it looks like. So you can observe that this is a very clearly demarcated plateau. Similarly, this is a very clearly demarcated plateau. So these are parts of the Peninsular Plateau. Now after the peninsula we can talk about the coastal plains. Now when in this coastal plains we have a large number of ports and shipyards. So this is the coastal plains. Now the coastal plains, as the name suggests, they are near the coast and they are very plain areas. So we do not have a large number of ups and downs in these areas. They are pretty flat, like this. So unlike the eastern and the western Ghats, which are very high, these areas are more or less flat. And these areas have a large amount of agricultural activity that is going on, because these areas are flat, and also because these areas have the deltas of a large number of rivers. So for instance, we have the Mahanadi Delta, the deltas of Krishna, Godavari, Kaveri, and so on. So these areas, when you look at a delta, so when you have a delta, you'll find that there is a large amount of deposition of silt in this area, which makes this area very fertile, and plus you also have a steady supply of water. So both of these together mean that in these flat lands you have a large amount of agricultural activity. So for instance, this is an image of the western coastal plains in Goa. So this is Panji, and you can observe that you have this portion that is a flat land. This portion is hilly, which is the Western Ghats, and we are observing that in this region you have the Arabian Sea, and we are finding a large amount of sediments that are getting into the Arabian Sea. This is another example of the western coastal plains. So this is an image from Diu, and you can observe that this is a very flat area. So this is the beach. Then in Jamnagar So when we talk about Jamnagar, we are talking about this area. So in Jamnagar, we find that you have these plain regions that are very easily inundated by the sea. So whenever there is a high tide, this region will be below water. When there is a low tide, then this region will emerge back again, telling us that the heights are not very great. Now this is the western coastal plains in Kozhikode, and this area you'll find that it is very densely habited. So we have large number of houses in these areas, and this is a city. So we have the eastern coastal plains and we have the western coastal plains. In the eastern coastal plains, we can talk about the Utkal plains. So the Utkal plains begin with the Mahanadi delta. So you can observe that this has a very triangular structure characteristic of the delta. Here we have the Chilka lagoon. So this is a brackish water lake, a salty water lake. We have the town of Visakhapatnam. So if you look at this Mahanadi delta, we can observe that the river Mahanadi is breaking up into a large number of distributaries, and there is a large amount of sediment that has been deposited in this area. This is a picture from the Chilika lagoon. Here again you can observe that the lagoon is not having a great depth of water. Now this is the eastern coastal plains in Dhanushkodi, and here you can observe that we have a beautiful sea. Then we have the islands. So we have the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and this is an image from Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and we also have the Lakshadweep Islands, which are made up of a large number of atolls. So primarily the activity that has made the Lakshadweep Islands is the coral activity. So they are biological in origin for a large part. So to sum up, in this lecture we saw that India is uniquely situated in Asia. So we sit to the north of the Indian Ocean, and we are surrounded by the Arabian Sea to our west and the Bay of Bengal towards our east. Now this location has its own geopolitical significance because a large number of sea routes have to pass near our country to move from east to west. The country has a good amount of network of communication and transportation. And if you look at the history of India, we'll find that the Indian plate has been moving towards the north, and it collided with the Eurasian plate. When it collided with the Eurasian plate, it led to a zone of convergence, which led to the formation of fold mountains, which are the Himalayas of today. And the Himalayas are still rising. So they are still showing tectonic activity. We find earthquakes. And when the area was being folded into the fold mountains called Himalayas, this area was essentially comprising of the sediments and the sedimentary rocks of the Tethys Sea that existed before the Himalayas in this region. And so the Himalayas are primarily formed out of sedimentary rocks, because of which they do not have a very great amount of strength. Now, if we look at the subcontinent of India from a geological point of view, we can divide India into three different geological regions. So the first is this fold mountains called the Himalayas, which are the northern mountains. Then we have a major portion, that is the Peninsular block, which was there in the Indian plate even say 70 million years ago. So this is a very old land which moved towards the Eurasian plate, and ultimately it collided. So geologically this portion is very different from the young fold mountains, that is the Himalayas. Now in between both of these we have the northern plains. Now the Himalayas are of tectonic origin, they are young fold mountains. The peninsular block is mostly comprised of igneous rocks that came out of the basalt provinces, out of volcanic activity, but the northern plains are mostly of alluvial deposits. So when the Himalayas started to be eroded, the rivers that moved from the Himalayas, that eroded the Himalayas, they moved towards south and they started to deposit the sediments when their speeds went low. And through this, over thousands of years, we got our northern plains. So these are the three geological regions: the mountains, the peninsular block, and the Indo-Ganga Brahmaputra plain. Then if we look at the physiographical divisions, we find 6 divisions. The first is the north and the northeastern mountains. Now in this context, we saw that the northern mountains is the Himalayas. The Himalayas begin at Nanga Parvat on the western edge and they end at Namcha Barwa in the east. And they continue in the form of a continuous chain, which is also known as the Himalayan arc. Now the Himalayas, when they were formed in the form of young fold mountains, they began as crumpled regions, and so we have ups and downs. And so we have several ranges of mountains that are one after the other in the north. So they move from west to east, and we find parallel ranges that are arranged north to south. So we have the Great Himalayas or the Himadri, we have the Himachal, we have the Shivaliks, and we also have certain other ranges such as the Pir Panjal range or the Ladakh range or the Zanskar range. Now, in the northeast, we find that after Namcha Barwa, the mountains turn in the north-south direction. And in that case, we have the Naga hills, we have the Mizo hills, and we have the continuation in the form of Arakan Yoma and Pegu Yoma. In this portion, we also have the Garo Khasi and Jaintia hills that are there in Meghalaya. Now, similar to these mountains, we also have mountain ranges to the west of the country. So essentially, these mountain ranges keep India secluded. They keep the moistures in this region. They do not permit them to cross over to China, and they also protect us from the cold winds from the north of the country. And so the Himalayas act as a climatic divide. So this is the first physiographic division. Then we have the northern plain. Now the northern plain, as we have observed, it is formed out of alluvial deposits. So when the rivers that are draining the Himalayas, they perform a lot of erosion in the Himalayas, they carry the sediments, and once they come out of the Himalayas, once they come into the plain regions, the speed goes down, and so the erosional activity becomes less, the transport capability becomes less, and the sediments begin to be deposited. Generally, we observe that there is a gradation of the sediments. So the larger sized pebbles or rocks, they will be deposited earlier, and we saw an example in the form of the Bhabar zone. So in the Bhabar zone, we find large number of rocks, typically rounded in shape because they have been brought down by rivers through the process of erosion, but you find such a large number of rocks that at times you will find that the river has just disappeared below these rocks. Then later on, we have the alluvial deposits. So we have the Khadar alluvial and the Bangar alluvial. And ultimately, when these rivers reach to the Bay of Bengal, they form large deltas. Now, the northern plains are drained by 3 major river systems. We have the Indus River system to the west, and the Indus River system moves from north to south. And in the case of the Indus River system, it drains into the Arabian Sea. The Ganga and the Yamuna system, they move from west to east, and they ultimately join the Brahmaputra, which originates in China, and then it enters into India, and in India it flows from east to west. So both of these rivers join together, the Ganges and the Brahmaputra, and then they begin to move from north to south direction. And when they drain into the Bay of Bengal, they form very large sized delta, which is the Sundarbans delta. So these are the northern plains. Next we have the Indian desert. Now the Indian desert again is a very flat area full of sand, and it is a very dry area. And it is dry primarily because the hills of this area, the Aravalli hills, they are oriented in a southwest to northeast direction. So essentially, if these hills were oriented say 90 degrees to their current orientation, they would have stopped the monsoons, because in our country most of the monsoons in this region come as the southwest monsoons. Now because the hills are arranged parallel to these monsoons, so they are not able to stop these monsoons, and so there is little orographic rainfall in this region. Next we have the Peninsular Plateau. Now the Peninsular Plateau, it lies in the peninsula of India, which means that it is a triangular shaped landmass that is surrounded by sea on all the three sides, or surrounded by waters on all the three sides. And this is a plateau region. This is a very old region of India because it existed in the Indian plate when it began to move towards the Eurasian plate. And so typically we find that the hills that are found in this region, they are very old, they have been heavily eroded, and so they are not very high, and at the same time they do not have pointed peaks such as what we find in the Himalayas. In the Himalayas, because of the glacier activity, we find a large number of horns, but we do not find them either in the Peninsular Plateau or also in the Aravallis. So all of these hills are gently rolling hills with not sharp peaks. Now in the case of the Peninsular Plateau, we have the Deccan traps, which were formed because of the creation of the basalt floodplains. So when there was a volcanic activity around 65 million years ago, which also led to the extinction of the dinosaurs, in those days a large quantity of magma was released into this area in the form of lava, and it formed basalt. Now because layers after layers of basalt were deposited, so after erosion, today we observe that there is a staircase like structure in this region, which is known as traps. So these are the Deccan traps. Then we also have the Central Highlands, which is an extension of the Peninsular Plateau towards the west. So in areas such as Gir of Gujarat, we'll find the Central Highlands, and here again we'll find that there are rolling hills, they are not very high. Then the Peninsular Plateau continues even to the northeast portion of the country, and so there are these three divisions of the Peninsular Plateau. After this we have the coastal plains. So we have the eastern coastal plain and we have the western coastal plain. The eastern coastal plains are between the Eastern Ghats and the Bay of Bengal, and the western coastal plains are between the Western Ghats and the Arabian Sea. Typically the eastern coastal plains are much wider than the western coastal plains, and this is primarily because through the tectonic movements, the eastern part of the country, it moved up and the western part of the country moved down. So essentially the continental shelf that was there on the eastern side, it became more and more exposed, and on the western side it became more and more submerged. And so on the western side we find that the seas are very deep, whereas on the eastern side we find that they are not that deep because this whole portion has emerged out of the emergence of the continental shelf area. And so while we find a large number of ports on the western coastal plains, we do not find a very large number of ports on the eastern coastal plains. They are much more difficult to navigate. But in the case of the eastern coastal plains, so many large rivers drain into this area, into the Bay of Bengal, that we find large deltas. So we have the prominent rivers as Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna and Kaveri. Now all of these make large sized deltas. Now being a flat region with ample amount of sediments and ample amount of water, it means that these areas are heavily put under agriculture. On the western coastal plains, we find there is some agriculture that is going on, but typically we find that most of these areas are much more suited to trade and commerce, because we have had ports since very ancient times. And so we will find a large number of cities on the western coastal plains. Next, we have the islands. So we have the Andaman and Nicobar Islands that are towards the southeast of the country, and we have the Lakshadweep Islands that are towards the southwest of the country. Now the Andaman and Nicobar Islands are large sized islands, whereas the Lakshadweep Islands are very small sized islands. The Lakshadweep Islands are actually of biological origin, and a large number of atolls are found there, which means that these islands were made by the corals. And so these are the 6 physiographic divisions of India: the northern and northeastern mountains, the northern plain, the Indian desert, the peninsular plateau, the coastal plains and the islands. These large variations in geology and physiography of the country have ensured that we have a large number of climates, varied habitats in our country, which play a very important role in biodiversity. So India is having a rich storehouse of biodiversity, primarily because of these variations in geology and physiography in different regions of India. So in the next lecture, we shall explore the climate and habitats that we have in our country. That's all for today. Thank you for your attention. Jai Hind.